Good morning. My name is Darrell Gunter. I am the president and CEO of Gunter Media Group, and it is my pleasure to bring you the 2021 edition of the Innovators. To give you a little background on the Innovator session, this Innovator session started back in 2013 at the Professional Scholarly Publishing Meeting, and it ran until 2018. And then last year, I was blessed to be asked to bring it to the Charleston Conference, which I believe is the best venue for it. We have 3 sessions going on concurrently. And so I'm happy that you're in my session, but please do after the conference to look at the other sessions that are moderated by Sandy Avila, as well as my good friend, Chris Conelli. So allow me to start with our agenda. We're going to do some brief introductions, then we're going to roll tape, which are the presentations, and then we're going to have a good Q&A. Okay. Now, our presentations are going to be in this following order. We have Benetech, which is Mr. Michael Johnson, here in person, Mr. Darryl Stuhr from Baylor University. We have ChronosHub, Mr. Martin Jagerhorn. Columbia University, we have Colleen Major and David Hodges. And in person here from the Citadel is Mr. Don Hawkins. And then last but not least, my good friend, Jake Zarnegar from HUM.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm Michael Johnson, the Director of Content Partnerships here at Benetech, and I'm here to speak with you very briefly and very quickly about innovations for digital accessibility. So off we go. So what is Benetech? Benetech, of course, is where I work. We are a 20-plus-year-old charity, a nonprofit, and our focus is about using technology for the social good. While we have a variety of programs, our main efforts go into accessible digital content. And when we talk about accessible content, we're not talking about folks who are able to get to it, they have access to it. That's one kind of accessibility. But when we're talking about accessible digital content, we're talking about making downloaded content available for people with print disabilities. Our internal mantra, the unachievable goal for which we all strive, is every book to every user every day. An innovative program that we have, which we've had for a very long time, is Bookshare, and it continues to innovate and it continues to grow. Bookshare currently has 5 million books in our repository. That's 1 million unique titles in 5 different formats, and those numbers go up almost every day. We have 800,000 plus readers around the world. We're in something like 80 or 85 different countries. And all of our users are documented with a print disability, so they have a certified print disability. And if one of our members is in a U.S. educational institution of any type, then their membership is free, and all of those 5 million books are available to them for free. We have library partners around the world, both national libraries where we run the whole digital accessible library for them, as well as plenty of libraries here in this country where we are a resource to help them serve their print disabled readers. So my question to you, first slide, first question, is your library or your university using Bookshare? Find out. And by the way, did I mention it's free? So Born Accessible, what does that mean? I keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it. We say it all the time here. So Born Accessible means content that is basically delivered. It comes out of the production process in a digital format that is accessible to all readers, traditional readers, blind readers, or any other readers with any type of certified print disability like low vision, dyslexia, which is roughly 20% of the population, or any other reading challenges, right? So you have print disabled readers on your campus and in your library. I can almost promise you that. Just because they don't have a cane or a guide dog doesn't mean that they're not print disabled. It's not just blind readers. So Born Accessible is about adopting the publishing workflow to create better content for everybody, right? It takes all readers into consideration. And by buying Born Accessible content, you will at your institution, and the students in your institution and other people who buy books, is really the best way for you to serve your print disabled readers. And again, you have them. Our most recent innovation is our GCA program. GCA is Global Certified Accessible. We're the world's first international third-party program. We certify the publishers output before it goes into the sales and distribution channel. So before it gets loaded in the bookstore or before it gets on sale at EBSCO or ProQuest and ends up in your library, we work with the publishers then to make sure when it gets ready for sales and distribution, it's already fully accessible. We created this program to help our publishers. We have over 1,000 publishers who are contributing content to Bookshare today. And those publishers told us, hey, we like contributing to Bookshare. We just donate our files in whatever condition they're in, and you guys make them as accessible as you can inside of Bookshare. But we want to do better. We want to do more. We want to be fully accessible. We want to be fully accessible because it's the social justice thing to do. We want to be fully accessible because we realize there's an enormous amount of the human population who has a print disability. And we want to be fully accessible because we realize in the United States, we're in violation of the American with Disabilities Act if we're not accessible. And in Europe, we will soon be in violation of the European Accessibility Act. So there's a lot of reasons why the publishers come to us for this help. And we teach them and certify their workflow. So they're creating these books fully accessible at the beginning. And we're not talking about creating separate files. It's one e-content workflow. It's the same ISBN or ISSN. It's the same prices, same borrowing privileges, whatever those rules are, it's the same rules. They're just better EPUBs. And EPUB is the format we're talking about here because that's the only truly accessible format out there for downloadable content. There are already over 60 organizations around the world, 7 or 8 different countries now in the GCA on 3 different continents, and there are hundreds and hundreds of titles available for sale. When I say available for sale, I'm talking about for your students via their Follett bookstore, their Barnes & Noble bookstore, through Vital Source or Red Shelf, hundreds and hundreds of titles already available for sale for the students, and an equal number, if not larger, number of titles available through EBSCO or ProQuest. So the titles are out there. They're ready for you already. The main hurdles to overcome when somebody who's creating content, whether they're journals or books, are print page fidelity. An accessible ebook file needs to be 100% in sync with the print book. So if the professor says read from page 88 to page 102, I need to be able to go to print page 88 in my ebook. I don't want to go to the reflowable page 88 on my iPhone because then I'll be on page 27 or 32 or something. I need to be able to move in the digital file just as if I would move in the print file. So that's print page fidelity. Another big one is navigation through the book. If there's a link there that says click here to go to page 73, I need a way back. And for endnotes and footnotes and different navigational aids inside of a book, in the digital world, we need to be able to have links and breadcrumbs so the users with print disabilities can effectively navigate the book. Image descriptions are another huge area. There's an image in your book. What is it? You need to describe it. What are these images, right? And then why is it important? If it's the Eiffel Tower and it's a travel book, well, then we can talk about why we chose to put that picture in there. Are we telling people its importance to France? Are we telling people when to go visit the Eiffel Tower? What's the reason that the picture is in the book? If it's a book on engineering, then we're going to talk about Eiffel himself and structural steel and all other kinds of principles. So describe it as the Eiffel Tower, and then describe why the picture is there, what the picture is and why it is there. Language shift is another example. If you have a book in Spanish and you're going to throw off 1 or 2 words in English, that's okay, because the assistive technology will know the book is in Spanish. If you have a book in Spanish and you're going to shift it in 2 paragraphs in French, the publisher needs to tell the assistive technology we're shifting languages now to French, so that the assistive technology won't try and read the French words in Spanish. So these are just some of the hurdles that need to be overcome. And what's the innovation? Global Certified Accessible. Our program helps the publishers overcome all of these hurdles as they go through certification. So what do you do now? First thing, I go back to the first slide, make sure your university is using Bookshare. Oh, and did I mention that Bookshare is free for the institution and for any certified print disabled user? Adapt your purchasing policies to require third-party certification for all your content. You can learn from other universities. Here's just a few of the ones out there doing the most interesting work. Southern New Hampshire University, University of Michigan, University of Virginia. Or you could reach out to me directly, Michael J. like Johnson at benetech.org. Send me an email. I'm happy to reply. That's all my time for now. I look forward to questions. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Darryl Stuhr, and I'm the Director of Digitization, Digital Collections, and Digital Preservation Services here at Baylor University. Today we're presenting our early implementation results using Cortex's handwriting text recognition services with archival materials from the Armstrong Browning Library. The Digitization and Digital Preservation Services Group works out of the Riley Digitization Center to provide centralized digitization, digital collection development, and digital preservation services to the Armstrong Browning Library and other special libraries and archives on campus. In 2020, we moved our digital collections from Content DM to Cortex for many reasons, but the in-platform server-side processing OCR, AV transcription, and handwriting text recognition services were nice features we were excited to try on our new projects and collections. We currently have over 70 collections and 120,000 objects online in Cortex. Collections include sheet music, gospel music, books, maps, photographs, correspondence, and manuscripts collections. With 9 collections from Armstrong Browning Library and Cortex, there are thousands of images that can benefit from HTR technology. Here's Jennifer Borderud, the director of the Armstrong Browning Library.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Borderud, Associate Librarian and Director of the Armstrong Browning Library and Museum. The Armstrong Browning Library and Museum, or the ABL as it is commonly known, on the campus of Baylor University in Waco, Texas, is dedicated to the study of the lives and works of the Victorian poets Robert Browning and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The ABL houses the world's largest collection of materials relating to the Brownings, as well as a growing collection of materials to support research and teaching in 19th century literature and culture. In 2012, in collaboration with Wellesley College in Wellesley, Massachusetts, the Browning Library and Baylor's Digital Collections and Digital Preservation Services team launched the Browning Letters Project, an effort to digitize and make accessible all correspondence written by and to the Brownings, scattered in institutions across the United States and around the world. This included the Brownings' 574 love letters in the special collections of Wellesley's Margaret Clapp Library. Through an additional partnership, the editors of the Brownings correspondence, an annotated edition of the Brownings letters, provided and continue to provide manual transcriptions for each letter added to the digital collection. These transcriptions are complete, accurate, and adhere to a consistent editorial style. They enable researchers to read each letter quickly and easily, to keyword search the text of the over 5,000 letters currently in the collection, and to utilize text data mining or other methods of digital scholarship. A graduate research assistant with the Armstrong Browning Library undertook a similar project when she organized and manually transcribed a substantial portion of the library's Victorian collection, which consists of over 3,000 letters and manuscripts by prominent and lesser-known British and American literary, political, and religious figures. As with the Browning Letters Project, these transcriptions enable researchers to read letters and manuscripts in various hands quickly and easily, to keyword search across the collection, and to engage in digital analysis. While full transcription of digitized content is ideal, transcription on this scale takes time, and waiting until collection materials are fully transcribed delays broad access to these materials. When the coronavirus pandemic suddenly forced classes online and halted travel for visiting researchers, the ABL and the Digital Preservation Services team decided to move forward with the digitization of several additional important collections, including our collections of Robert Browning's and Elizabeth Barrett Browning's literary manuscripts, but this time relying on Cortex's handwritten text recognition technology in the absence of full manual transcriptions.
As Jennifer mentioned, one of the first digital collections we deployed for ABL was the Browning Letters Collection. For this project, we were able to partner with a Browning scholar to provide highly accurate transcripts for the letters. For current and future projects, we must use other resources to generate new transcripts. Our current project with the ABL is developing the Robert Browning Manuscripts Collection. These materials were scanned over the summer by our intern, Rachel Acelta. This collection has no existing transcriptions, and we do not have the same opportunity to rely on a scholar to assist with the transcriptions. The digitization is complete, and prior to processing these materials through HTR, we looked to test this newly developing technology. For our sample size, we randomly chose 40 handwritten pages across 3 ABL collections and 8 different hands, assessing accuracy on 13,060 characters. These 40 pages already contain transcripts created by a Browning scholar, an Armstrong Browning Library graduate assistant, and our intern. This sample, written by Thomas Carlyle, has an 85% accuracy rate. This Robert Browning manuscript achieved a 94% accuracy rate. This manuscript, 92% accuracy. And on this page, achieving 94% accuracy, we've highlighted some of the words that were missed in the HTR. We did throw a few challenging pieces at the HTR service, and 13,000 characters achieved an overall accuracy rate of 72%. With our current project, samples from the Robert Browning manuscripts averaged above 90% accuracy, an acceptable rate for fully processing this collection. This collection is queued for HTR and will go live at the end of this month with HTR data. The Cortex Interface allows HTR-generated transcripts to be edited for better accuracy. So following the HTR processing, we will adjust our workflow to include editing the generated transcripts. We anticipate that editing the HTR-generated transcripts will be more efficient and cost-effective than having students transcribe them completely. So we plan to use Armstrong Browning Library students to assist with the editing. Online, the interface highlights search terms in the transcript, as well as the image, much like researchers are used to seeing when searching documents that have been OCR'd. For future projects, the Armstrong Browning Library and Riley Digitization Center plan to use Cortex's cutting-edge HTR technology to help ABL's 19th century materials be more easily discoverable and useful. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you to Jennifer and Rachel for their work on this presentation, as well as the Riley Center team for helping produce this presentation. You can visit the Baylor Library's digital collections at digitalcollections.baylor.edu.
Hello and welcome to this Charleston 2021 session on how new open access management infrastructure is unburdening the researchers and focusing that on a national collaboration in Luxembourg. My name is Martin Jagerhorn and I'm head of business development at ChronosHub, and I have Tom Jacobs with me here today from the Luxembourg National Research Fund. So we'll take you through our collaboration, give you an overview, and highlight a number of lessons learned from this collaboration so far. But first of all, just quickly for you that may not be so familiar with ChronosHub, it is the name of both the company based in Copenhagen, Denmark, and the platform, which is an open access management platform used for APC management and managing also open access agreements. And we work a lot with 3 different stakeholder groups: funders, institutions, including library consortia, and also directly with a lot of publishers. And independently of the perspective of these different stakeholder groups, we all share a lot of common challenges. And this is also the case for Luxembourg, and Tom will explain that in more detail soon. So from our point of view, we have a lot of stakeholders with systems, but still acting quite a lot in silos. And this leads to a lot of manual and duplicated work for everyone involved, with fragmented data and hence no reliable analytics. It's time consuming and high costs for all parties. And of course, we then also have the non-compliance risks. So the question is, how can we navigate these complexities? And based on these different collaborations and lessons learned, in particular also with Luxembourg, we have identified a number of best practices. Institutions that are really successful, they do have a developed open access strategy, first of all. And they tend to, in that strategy, to put the author experience first, really trying to unburden the authors in all kinds of ways along the different open access management processes. But they're also quite bold. They need to be at the forefront of open access and proactively drive change. And a key component of these open access strategies is also to centralize the open access funds. By having a central fund, well, you can get data under control, even if you're a very broad university and decentralized. You can still centralize the open access funds. So this is a key component in the best practice examples we've encountered. Collaboration is always key. That goes both for collaboration internally between the library and the research office in particular, because they both deal with quite important aspects when we talk about open access management, but of course also with third parties. So in the Luxembourg collaboration, we collaborate around the OS Switch, and we've also integrated the journal checker tool and a lot of other sources. And we work quite hard on trying to standardize and facilitate for everyone to have an exchange of data. So the standardization concerns different standards into the data formats, but also seen to the processes between now the funder and the institutions in Luxembourg, and a lot about the terminology. So we all understand the same things when we talk about hybrid and gold and green and so forth. At the same time as we try to balance that with the requirement or the need for flexibility, because clearly there is not one model that fits all. All of these are prerequisites for automation. So integrating with different systems like submission systems is important, but we still need also, of course, to make use of persistent identifiers so we can automate the handling of the data without the need for manual validation. So with that said, I'll hand over to Tom to give you a little bit more insights into the Luxembourg collaboration.
So thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. My main responsibilities are in the area of digital transformation, where I manage the deployment and implementation of new and innovative platforms and services. And I also represent my organization in the areas of data management and open science. I will give today a brief introduction into open access and open science in Luxembourg and the journey that we are currently on. As part of our various missions and funding instruments, we are also actively supporting and funding open access to publications. For this, I have to make a short dive into the past. So up until 2016, we have provided funding for publications via grant project budgets with no dedicated policy on open access. In 2017, we introduced an open access policy, which required our grantees to publish with CC BY licensing, having to acknowledge FNR, and having to respect embargo periods of up to 6 months maximum. To cover APCs, we introduced a dedicated open access funding instrument. And now, since this year, since January, we have a policy that is compliant with Plan S, and we integrated our open access fund into ChronosHub. Before I tell you more on that, let me tell you about the challenges of our previous open access funding model. So the program framework of that program was to set up an annual call for applications that allowed the reimbursement of APCs that occurred during the previous year. That had several drawbacks, as it was painful for institutions to collect all the data on publications, and for us as FNR to review each and every publication for its eligibility. So there was often a high amount of ineligible requests, as grantees often either forget to acknowledge FNR, do a wrong acknowledgement, apply a wrong license because they just don't know better, or simply don't pay attention to embargoes and other requirements that we gave them. Lastly, also, the fund had a very bad scalability because the administrative work increased tremendously with an ever-growing number of applications and publications that passed through it. So where do we stand today? Today, we enable direct open access through ChronosHub. So our grantees can access via ChronosHub a journal finder that directly allows them to check policy compliance and also confirms the amount that we can fund. Providing all the checks from the very start, the risk for human error has diminished tremendously. So the grantee has a security of funding and can, if wish, in many cases directly submit his manuscript via ChronosHub or register it simply after the submission. We as FNR, we can directly validate the eligibility and, if a compliance error may occur, still request a modification. Lastly, we can directly fund the APCs as they occur. But our work on open access and open science is not limited to this alone. By continuing to highlight over and over again the importance, most of all, the benefits of open access and open science.
Thank you very much, Tom. To summarize what Tom just said, we have illustrated the situation in Luxembourg here, where we try to facilitate the collaboration between these 4 stakeholder groups. It starts by providing authors with guidance through the submission process, so they can see which journals that offer compliant routes into FNR's policy, but also who will pay and how much for any APCs based on, for example, the institution's agreements with the publishers. The authors can also make seamless manuscript submissions to the publishers as those systems are integrated, and we can automate the data collection of both article metadata and the invoices. And that also means that we can automate the rest of the processes, including approvals for payment and also compliance checks. And we make use of different kinds of deposit accounts to pay the publishers directly and avoid that authors have to re-enter any data several times in different systems. As the data is structured with global unique identifiers, we can also automate reporting back to FNR and institutions for monitoring the open access agreements that are in place, but also to automate repository deposits. So with that said, thank you very much for joining, and we're looking forward to the Q&A session later.
Hello, good morning. We are Colleen Major and David Hodges from Columbia University Libraries, here to tell you about our work to advance the academic e-book reading experience. Like most academic libraries, ebooks constitute a significant portion and an ever-increasing portion of our library's collection budgets. The number of ebooks available to our patrons over the past few years, both open access and subscribed, has increased dramatically. The advantages of ebooks are clear. They allow for anywhere and anytime access, and as well, in many cases, multi-user access. However, the ebook use and reading experience can vary greatly from vendor to vendor, potentially causing frustration and confusion for our patrons. Our goal is to break apart the siloed vendor reading platform systems and provide a unified single interface for our patrons, and ultimately provide a better academic ebook experience for students and faculty, which includes quick, seamless access to the full ebook. Several core principles guide our mobile e-reader strategy. One is to reduce the friction, frustration, and platform fatigue of our ebook reading experience, and two, to commit to open source, open standard solutions for fulfillment and access control. This strategy became more relevant when the COVID-19 pandemic created a greater need for remotely accessible resources. Columbia University Libraries is embarking on a multi-phase plan to make ebook holdings available to patrons through the open source Library Simplified mobile platform. Library Simplified is an open source e-reading software that allows for a consistent e-reading experience for patrons. We launched modestly with selections from our digitized special collections, along with a cross-section of licensed scholarly monographs from academic publishers. The initiative has now moved into incorporating a greatly expanded selection of licensed and open access resources, all available in a cross-platform mobile app backed by SAML-based authentication. We are moving towards an academic e-reading experience that provides a common method of access, fewer clicks to get to full text, and a simple, consistent user interface.
Simply and its umbrella effort called Library Simplified were developed at NYPL, New York Public Library, as a response to issues of access and use of ebooks in the public library space. Launched in 2016, the platform has seen a steady stream of functional and back-end improvements since then. The open source platform was a good fit for Columbia in some respects, but also presented challenges in others. For one thing, the system was designed for a public library bar-coded PIN authentication method rather than institutional single sign-on. So part of our agreement with Lyrasis, who hosted and set this up for us, was to do the work to implement SAML-based sign-on so users can authenticate with their unique credentials. They also added support for PDF books in addition to EPUB, and some other features that allowed us to better target the academic library context. Having launched with a limited set of open access and DRM-free licensed materials, we're now working on large vendors such as ProQuest, Springer, and EBSCO to enable seamless access to entitlements in the app. One of our guiding principles was to retain our catalog as the hub for discovery of ebooks. Although we currently have only a small portion of our holdings available through Simply E, we expect this to grow substantially and want our users to be able to easily locate books to read in Clio, our public catalog. Making this possible required some custom workflows I'll return to in just a bit. Suffice it to say that out of the box, Simply E does not know what's in your ILS and vice versa. When a user looks at a bib record in Clio, they will see a link to read the book on a mobile device, along with other options like reading on a vendor platform. We aren't actually taking anything away. We're only adding additional options. Clicking through takes you to a landing page in the Simply E web catalog with some summary metadata and the ability to check out the book and add it to your list of books. And that you will see this book then in the mobile app where you can read it. And note, you can also discover books in the mobile app, and there's multiple ways to get to the book, but this is the primary user flow that we were targeting. Given the emphasis on the catalog as the version of record, we wanted to make sure that the user has a way to navigate back to Clio from the book in whatever context. We thus added links in the metadata in Simply E so you can get back to the same book in our catalog. This also entailed some extra steps in our workflow, as it is not available out of the box in Simply E. As mentioned, there were certain limitations that we had to contend with. Simply E, having been developed mainly for public library use, lacks ERM integration and doesn't easily scale for large and variable vendor entitlements. For our initial rollout, we had to devise some custom workflows around vendors and collections. We started with low-hanging fruit, really. The open access books from OAPen, our in-house digitized collections hosted on Internet Archive, and a selection of university press titles from Johns Hopkins and Castellini. After some experimentation, we landed on provisional workflows that harvested data from third-party APIs based on selection criteria from our catalog. We created Python scripts to extract the data and compose it into OPDS feeds, which are read by the circulation manager, which is the backend for Simply E. Here's a diagram showing the basic process for open access content we used, for example, from OAPen or Internet Archive. There were several steps involving both technology and metadata staff. To accommodate the requirements to connect books to the catalog, we had to do a bit of work. Fortunately, the processes that we devised here are reusable and adaptable to other content. To understand what's going in the system, we use a dashboard that's built in Google Data Studio that uses data that flows through Google Analytics. One complicating factor was the announcement of the Palace project earlier this year. This is a Lyrasis sponsored project. With grant funding from the Knight Foundation in partnership with DPLA, the Palace project aims to branch off from NYPL and provide features more tailored to the user base. We're still in the midst of this transition and are staying on Simply E for now, but presumably we'll make this move to the new platform once it's up and running and once we've had a chance to test and evaluate. At Columbia, we're assessing our initial launch while working towards future iterations. We conducted a survey of faculty, staff, and students after the initial launch, and we'll do more as we progress. We are currently working with large vendors on integration, including Shibboleth authentication. We also envision improvements on our end to make things more maintainable and scalable. Currently, we have around 28,000 titles in the system, but with the inclusion of large vendors like ProQuest, Springer, and EBSCO, that number will scale up significantly. And thank you for listening to our presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Hawkins, and I'm the Academic Technology Librarian at the Daniel Library at the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina. Almost 3.5 years ago, I shaved a beard I had worn since the Clinton administration to don the uniform of the unorganized militia of South Carolina, also known as the Citadel faculty. I have, in the interim, almost gotten used to the idea of being a librarian who wears an Army uniform. The main part of my job is running the Citadel Makerspace, which is in the library and is the primary location for this story. I love having a makerspace in the library because it provides access to a set of tools, 3D printing, CNC milling, virtual reality in non-COVID years, and more, to the entire campus community. All students, staff, and faculty have access regardless of discipline. In this way, we provide access to technologies and some instruction in their use to a wider range of students than those who would come across them as a matter of course in their studies. I love the idea of having engineers, artists, business majors, and more working in the same space. But what do you do when all those students have been sent home in the middle of a pandemic? I've heard every year in recent memory declared the worst year ever by someone either in conversation or on social media. I tired of this trope quickly and had been known to complain about it, but I reversed course and joined the consensus in the spring semester of 2020. I teach a class centered around makerspace technologies in the fine arts minor here at the Citadel. As you could probably guess, it is a hands-on class, and I panicked when classes went online mid-spring semester. Sometime earlier that spring, a friend from DC reached out to me online wondering if I was able to do some printing of masks as he had seen news of others doing, which got me thinking about it. I wasn't the only one at the Citadel considering this. Around this time, two other Citadel professors, Dr. Sarah Imam and Dr. James Bezjian from the Schools of Health and Human Performance and Business, respectively, were thinking along similar lines. Dr. Imam is an MD, and Dr. Bezjian runs the Baker School of Business Innovation Lab. We all connected and began discussing the ways we might help out with a mask project. Their contacts at the Medical University of South Carolina had developed a mask, the SAFE mask, that had been granted temporary provisional approval for use in their hospital, as they had a severe shortage of personal protective equipment, or PPE. Collectively, we thought it would be a great idea to print and assemble as many of these masks as we could. Kay Moody, citing Earl Lee, points out the tension that exists between public libraries as institutions that provide access even to anti-government information being funded by the government. There's a similar tension between libraries wanting to provide information and resources freely, yet they exist in a series of nested bureaucracies, from the library itself to the school to the state. So the first hurdle was to get permission. Makerspaces are by design flexible spaces that value the ability to adapt to solve new problems as they arise. This is, however, not the nature of bureaucracy. I immediately started printing the models to test our capability for the project, but we had to get buy-in for the concept, first from our director, Aaron Weimer, pictured here. I was not surprised that Aaron was on board, if, he said, we could get permission from the college's legal department. I feared this would prove a roadblock, but our counsel was on board as soon as he heard about the masks. Aaron took the project to the provost as well, who approved the moving of some funds around. In this case, I think the strength of the need for personal protective equipment and the clear danger from the virus gave everyone involved the will to cut through any concerns or red tape. I admit that this step could be the most difficult in other situations. But while we waited to hear if we could proceed, we didn't just sit around. We had to see if we had the capability for the project or the capability to improve on it. We had some concerns about printing and assembly time after our initial test prints, so we thought we'd see about trying to improve on the design. We took a replica life mask of John Keats that I'd created from a plaster of Paris replica using photogrammetry and used clay to shape a possible mask. Then using the Artec Leo scanner from the Business School's Innovation Lab, we scanned and printed it. We quickly determined this would not work for many reasons. Using Tinkercad, a very easy-to-learn computer-aided design or CAD software, I created a variation of another model that would print flat and therefore more quickly. This had dual impediments. The material we'd be using was too inflexible for it to fit a human face, and it did not have the emergency approval that the SAFE mask did. So, given that we had the capability to print the MUSC mask and the fact it could go into immediate use, we went with that option. Here, we ran into both the permissions and capability issues we were presented with a third, choosing a path forward quickly. In an emergency, this is vital. We were ultimately happy with our choice to go with the SAFE mask, but we faced a further problem mentioned above, assembly time. The masks themselves print in 5 parts. A set took about 9 hours to print. I could get 2 sets of models per machine per day if I started one in the morning and one in the evening. So I came in every day to switch prints. I had a grad assistant who was able to help me some days so I could get some rest. The assembly proved much more involved and time-consuming than we initially suspected. This necessitated taking the project to a wider community than just the initial 3 of us and Aaron. Soon the word spread beyond our campus. One of Dr. Bezjian's students got Coastal Carolina University's makerspace on board. They and other local makers started printing and sending us masks, so we had a lot of parts. Donations for supplies came in. but we had to cut flaps from rubber gloves, cut and fold HEPA filters from AC or air filters and fold them into shape, cut weather stripping, glue all of them into place, and tie on elastic straps. The HEPA filters are capable of filtering out viruses, but they have to be the right size and glued in properly or they won't work. So there's a quality control issue as well. We wouldn't want to send MUSC faulty masks. So we needed to establish a wider net of relationships. The first group that came in to help us was the Rotary Club of Charleston. Some of their members started coming in a couple times a week, and with socially distanced stations, they were of immense help assembling masks. They even provided some lunches. With that help, along with library staff working on the other days, we were able to begin to get assembly caught up with production. But my transition to line manager and quality control agent wasn't quite complete until the South Carolina National Guard stepped in. The Guard was initially assigned to one 20-day stint with us, but was renewed for several more. During this stage, we really caught up. Brigadier General Brad Owens presented both the Daniel Library and the Rotary Club of Charleston with plaques commemorating the project and a challenge coin to the staff sergeant who oversaw the Guard members who were assigned here. In total, we printed and/or assembled 1,001 masks between March and August. But through the process, I saw firsthand how libraries and makerspaces within them can pivot in a crisis and help the community. I learned several things from the experience. While it won't happen in every time, a crisis can really help cut through red tape. I saw the importance of choosing between several options quickly. Even if the design wasn't the most efficient, it was the one that we knew would work and would be allowed in the hospital. I learned the importance of establishing relationships both on and off campus. And on a personal note, having something helpful to do during the pandemic really helped me keep my anxiety in check. While I could never be grateful for the COVID-19 pandemic, I am grateful to Drs. Imam and Bezjian, Director Weimer and other library staff, the Rotary Club of Charleston, and the members of the South Carolina National Guard who helped show how a library can be a vital resource in a crisis.
Hello, my name is Jake Zarnegar, and I'm here today to talk to you about Hum. Hum is a new customer data platform built for association, societies, and nonprofit publishers. Hum comes from Silverchair. Silverchair has been providing a digital product and publications platform for nonprofits and society publishers for nearly 20 years. And by working very closely with this group of important and influential organizations, we've been able to develop some insights that go beyond simply publishing. And those insights really orbit around a particular question, and that is, how are these associations and societies doing? Are they growing? Are they engaging audiences, especially as we move into this era of nearly entirely digital interactions? And the initial evidence isn't great. Many associations are actually stagnant or declining in their membership, which is kind of a key way that they assess their health. They're also having trouble connecting with younger generations. In fact, this statistic here is a little bit of a time bomb waiting to go off as associations are having trouble making those same types of connections with younger generations that they have with their kind of older generations that have been engaged with these associations for some time. And what's behind that? You know, as we move now into almost entirely digital interactions, including this presentation here, customers are really expecting things that they've been trained to expect from their interactions with nearly everyone. And that is, they expect to be personalized. They expect their experiences to be tailored to them. And they also expect them to be connected. So understanding that if you were reading a publication or you've completed some education or certification, how you expect those experiences to understand each other and be tailored from that. And as you can see here, as the generations get younger, the expectations are increasing. So when we looked deeply into this, we found that associations, while they have the desire to do this, and certainly the professed kind of strategic initiative to make more personalized experiences for their members, their subscribers, their readers, currently they really lack the kind of core infrastructure to make this possible. to coordinate these experiences and to create these personalized content products. But that's not all bad, because they're actually in a very good position to be able to do this. They really just need to adopt some modern techniques to, again, compete with the others, including commercial interests and commercial publishers who are using these techniques to connect with their audiences. So if we look at this from a kind of strength gap analysis, you'll see on the left side, associations are very strong in brand, the content that they're producing. They have developed a membership and an audience that trusts them and uses their products, and they've used good technology and have created data from that technology over time digitally. But the gaps here on the right side is that they're actually not bringing that data together and using it in their program. So currently they have a limited understanding of each individual and groups and how they prefer to engage with the content. They usually don't have very much personalization or even coordination of experiences. They haven't brought together these records. As you see, we call them the golden record, that combines everything you know about a person in order to create a better experience for them. And you need a unified customer data platform, or a CDP, in order to do that. And that is why we developed Hum. Hum is a CDP, which is a new type of platform, really kind of the next generation of CRM, that brings together not only what folks tell you directly, but also observing how they interact with your products in order to create a better experience for them. And the way Hum works is it really brings your three major areas together as a publisher. It brings together your customer database. It brings together all of the activity happening across your digital platforms as people engage with your content. And it brings together your marketing and how people are reacting to the marketing you're sending out and how they're engaging with it or not engaging with it, in the sense of folks who are deleting all of your emails or not clicking through. You really need to understand how folks are engaging to your calls to action. So what Hum does is it actually brings all of this together. It syncs all of these in real time, and it then feeds back into these systems in order to let them create new personalized experiences. So when you add Hum to your organization, you really have a couple of ways to increase your impact. Number one, you can increase and find new audiences and members. So folks who are interacting with some of your content, but you don't know who they are or how to engage them, you can bring personalized content to them to engage them and bring them closer into your organization to get more value from you. Of course, you can, by understanding who might be interested in certain topic areas and is engaging with them, you can then put information in front of them for new events, programs, products, etc., publications that really meet their interests and serve their needs and match them up with that content to boost enrollment. And finally, this is for the association authors, editors as well, to understand what content people are engaging with at what times and what formats, and really tailor your program to meet the needs of your readers and of your audience. So to put it all together in one slide here, Hum connects your systems that already exist. It brings that data together, it assembles it, Hum, the platform develops rich insights and predictions about those groups, what they would be interested in, what would engage them, and then it feeds that back into your systems in order to create personalized calls to action, personalized experiences, and kind of boost the engagement and value that folks are getting from your organization. So that's it for me. I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Microphone is working. There we go. All right. So let's get some questions. I like to kick it off to the panel, and I'm gonna go to my in-person colleagues, and then we're going to go to our virtual presenters. If you could express to our community here, what is the one thing that the service that you presented today, what is that key benefit that they can provide to their end user community? And Mr. Hawkins, let's start with you, sir.
Well, the Citadel Makerspace is kind of location specific, but I do think sort of just the general idea of being able to be flexible and look at the tools that you actually have on hand is going to be very helpful in a similar situation. And we're in a situation where we're still in an ongoing pandemic. I mean, look at how sparsely the room is populated here versus how many people are online. So I think this is something that's going to be part of our lives for a while. So this is something that needs to be baked into it. So I think, yeah, that big key of getting buy-in from the bureaucracy is going to be the hardest part, I think, a lot of times. But there is a service that you're providing to the local
Yes.
community,
which means that the
exactly.
outreach of the library community can be quite significant.
Exactly. And depending on how you respond in those situations, sorry, I got a rabbit trail there, but how you respond to those situations can really have a lot of impact if you are aware going in that you can pivot this way.
Absolutely. Mr. Stuhr?
Sure. So accessibility and discoverability with the collections, we were able to rely on a Browning scholar to provide, nearly 100% accurate transcriptions for a while. But the Armstrong Browning Library still has thousands and thousands of pages. As a matter of fact, the collection that we worked on over the summer, the Robert Browning manuscript, we have 2,500 pages, no transcript whatsoever. So the technology that we're testing right now, thank you. So the technology that we're using right now will be able to provide transcripts immediately. They're not perfect. They're very much like the OCR that we're used to using, 80, 90% accuracy is what we're looking for. So we're looking for about the same in handwriting text recognition, and it's a rapidly growing technology. So we think that'll only get better and better.
Now, is this a service that other libraries can come to your library to utilize?
Not at this point. We're servicing the special collections and libraries around Baylor's campus right now and pushing them through the system. So the service is embedded into Cortex, and Cortex has become our new digital collections management system. We jumped from Content DM back spring 2020.
Very good. And speaking about accessibility, since you mentioned the word accessibility, hopefully Mr. Michael Johnson from Benetech is online, and so if he could answer that question in regards to what is the one thing that Benetech can provide to the library community.
So I'm here. So
hi, Michael.
Thank you for the question. Hello, good morning. So the main thing that Benetech provides to the university and library community is access to those 5 million books that I was talking about before. And I cannot stress enough that for a certified print disabled student, access to those titles is free, and the university can get an account and work with individual students, or individual students can sign up. So that's the number one thing. You can serve from a social justice and equity standpoint these learners who have just as many rights as anybody else for the content to do well in their classes, and perhaps even avoid a little bit of legal trouble that pops up around accessibility.
Okay, all right. Let's jump across the pond to Mr. Martin Jagerhorn of ChronosHub. Martin, how are you?
Fine, thanks, Darrell. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir.
So going into your question of what ChronosHub provides, it's difficult to maybe summarize that in one sentence, but it is really, our focus is really to unburden the researchers with all aspects of open access management, whether that is to pay for APCs or ensure compliance with funders or managing open access agreements. So unburdening the researchers, but of course also the library staff. And that is a very, very intense topic, at least in Europe. And it would be great to hear more what it looks like over the pond.
Excellent, excellent. And to my niece, Kara Morris, her alma mater, Columbia University, Colleen and David, how would you respond to that question?
Go ahead, Colleen.
I would just say that the overall goal is to provide seamless access to ebooks and easy and portable e-reading experience, and improve what our existing products look like. You can go ahead and add more, David.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah, it's about kind of breaking down the barriers to access to ebooks that reside on a lot of different platforms and services, and making it more seamless, not dependent on IP authentication or things that tend to discourage readers who may or may not be on campus.
Okay. And Jake Zarnegar, I hope he's with us. He has the flu and he might have had to go to the emergency room, but is Jake Zarnegar on cue? He sent me a note that he might have to go to see the doctor, but is he there? Okay. While we're searching for Mr. Jake Zarnegar, how about questions from our live audience? Any questions here? We are very appreciative of you being here in person. Any questions for our panel? All right, let's check on the virtual questions, because I have many more questions. So if I may ask our panel, what advice would you give to the attending library community here at the Charleston conference about the best way to test out your product, good, or service? And in reverse order, I'm going to start with Columbia University.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. What advice would you give to one of your fellow libraries that are interested in utilizing or trying your service? What is the best practice of getting started?
Well, I would say, I mean, ours is a little bit of a cautionary tale, as it's taken quite a while, and we've worked with a kind of leading edge a product that's undergone changes in governance and so forth. So, I mean, I think we've approached it in a spirit of experimentation and piloting and collecting feedback. I think that's always sound advice to plan on iterating and changing your plan as you go along in light of feedback and in light of changing changing factors outside your control. I think we've approached this in a little bit of a agile mindset to try to recalibrate our project as we go along.
Okay. Colleen, anything you would like to add?
No, I think that was a good answer. I think the other thing that has come up quite a bit is just kind of person power to support it. So that's something to kind of plan for ahead of time. I think it's not always as easy as you think it's going to be when you start. So,
okay. And Martin, what are your thoughts? I mean, you're presenting a very sophisticated new interface. What would you consider to be the best practices for a library to consider to begin to utilize your service?
Yeah, for ChronosHub, so we have a quite modular approach. So one module is a journal finder that you can try out. So at any of the universities using ChronosHub's journal finder or the public journal finder. So you can just go to the website essentially and you find links from there, from chronoshub.io. But otherwise, for all the other aspects where it's much more about the workflows and integrations and so forth, whether it's to populate your repository automatically and support green open access, or if it is more as said, managing APCs or open access agreements, then the easiest is just to schedule a meeting with us, and then we can set up a sandbox for you to play around with. And then we can also have a discussion, which I think always makes sense to take sort of any institution-specific context into consideration.
Excellent. A sandbox to play in. That's always very, very nice. And Mr. Johnson from Benetech, you've given us a lot of steps, but what is the one main step you feel that folks can immediately do to begin the process of making their collection fully accessible?
So the simplest thing to do is to begin with bookshare.org, which is our massive multi-million book repository. Just go to bookshare.org and sign up for the institution, and you can move forward from there. And if you want advice on creating content, then they can come directly to me, Michael J. at Benetech.org, to talk about how to get their workflow certified.
All right. And here in the room, Don, what is the one piece of advice you would give?
Well, I would say it's a little bit different because I'm not. It's a little bit different because I'm not providing a service to everyone. But I would say take stock of what you actually have on hand. I think a makerspace is pretty well positioned to pivot in a time like that because you see the thing of, and it's a space where you're supposed to work on these things. So I would just say take stock ahead of time. So that you know what types of things you have and what, so that in a crisis, you can turn those technologies and services to a different purpose. That's about it.
Cool. Last but not least, Mr. Stuhr.
Thank you. And for our technology, since it's embedded, the HDR technology is embedded into Cortex, you won't be able to use it for your own images or letters, but you can check out what we've done so far by going to Baylor University Library's digital collections, digitalcollections.baylor.edu, and looking and searching through the Armstrong Browning Library's archives. The Browning letters is the one exception. That's the one that's been, those transcripts have been created by the Browning scholar, but all the others and the new one coming online, the Robert Browning manuscripts, will be one to test in the next month or so.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our 2021 innovators a round of applause. On behalf of the Charleston Conference, I'm Darrell Gunter, and we want to thank you for your participation, and we hope that you come back next year. We have a great rest of the conference to go. I want to thank all of our presenters. Thank you very much.